You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts and connect with us on social media. That means like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out our YouTube page. This will help us, and that came as always with a please and a thank you. This episode is a fascinating conversation between three really good friends. That's Carlos, Satch, and myself. We start out by talking about alchemy, Eastern and Western, ancient and modern, and then go from there. We get a little bit out there in this episode, but we're just having a fun conversation, and I hope you enjoy it.
Did I ever tell you guys the story of the very famous, he's the most famous herbalist in Chinese medicine history. His name is Dr. Zhong. Jinjong is his name. Okay, it's a great name. I love the name.
Jinjong.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard this story.
So he is credited. Now, he didn't actually write this as a book. It was, sort of reorganized and compiled and from his teachings and his notes and things. But he
compiled
existed,
and annotated.
Yeah. He existed a couple thousand years ago, or something like that. And during his time, there was a terrible epidemic that was going on, and they believe by today's standards it might have been like typhoid or some cholera. It was different things going on at the time. Now, Dr. Zhong is credited for writing this book called Althoen, and that means the treatise on cold damage. And he was probably the first person in medical history that is recorded who was using substances, in this case, herbal medicines and some animal products and minerals and some things like that. A Chinese herbalist. He was probably the first person in history to actually write a systematic approach for how to diagnose and treat and have follow-up. Like, the person has these signs and symptoms. This is a diagnosis. This is the prescription I gave. It caused these side effects. This is what I gave them to counter that.
It's like a case study.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was amazing.
Early case study.
Yeah, this guy was amazing.
Kind of like Dioscorides in Greece. It was
Yeah,
like that.
incredible person. So he actually was this incredible herbalist, and something like a third or a half of his family perished because of this epidemic that was going on, which is a theme in Chinese medicine history. Every time there's some famous doctor, there was somebody or family member or teacher or some person that was ill and nobody could heal them, and then this person went on a quest to learn more and they became great. So anyway, there's all these incredible stories about Dr. Zhong. Well, this is a story that's worth hearing. Once upon a time, there was a man that came to Dr. Zhong. And Dr. Zhong's main job was to be something of a judge. Okay, he was in the imperial court somehow, and he was like a judge. And he just did his herb thing on the side because that was something that you didn't charge for. Okay. And at that time, herbal medicine was pretty involved. They already had herbal pharmacies, and so the different doctors would write their prescriptions because they didn't take money for the prescriptions. They would give the prescription to the client. The client would go to the dispensary. This was 2,000 years ago, and fill the prescription. And they'd had all the herbs in the pharmacy, and they'd put them all together. Okay, so this guy comes to Dr. Zhong, and he says, well, Dr. Zhong, I hear that you're the greatest doctor in the land. And I want to see if you can cure my particular condition. And so Dr. Zhong looks at him and says, well, you appear healthy. What's your condition? Poverty. He says, I want to see if you can cure my poverty. So Dr. Zhong goes, well, this is peculiar. He asks him a few questions. They have a little discussion. He says, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to need to sit down and talk for a while. He says, I might be able to help you. How much money do you have? And he tells him, well, this is how much I do have. He says, okay. He says, I want you to take that, go to the market, and buy as many apricots as you can possibly buy and bring them back to me. And so the guy goes and he buys a bunch of apricots. And he comes back and they sit down, and Dr. Zhong loved to eat apricots. So the idea was, we're going to eat these apricots and we're going to talk. And so he has this patient tell him his life story and the whole thing, and they had a heart-to-heart conversation, and they ate the entire basket of apricots. He said, here's what you're going to do. He says, take these apricot seeds home. He says, and plant them. And he gave him instructions for what to do. And he said, and you leave the rest to me. And so the guy's thinking, oh, but come on, if I plant these apricots, then, it's going to take years and years before they grow into trees and sprout apricots. And how much money are you going to make off apricots anyway? He says, you leave it to me. So the guy goes and he plants the apricots according to the prescription. A short period of time goes by, and all of a sudden, Dr. Zhong starts writing in all of his herbal formulas a new ingredient. The ingredient was the young sprouts of an apricot sapling. And all of the pharmacies came to Dr. Zhong saying, Dr. Zhong, what's this herb? We've never heard of this herb. We don't collect this. He goes, oh, you don't have that? Oh, well, this is the time of year. You must have it. I can't prescribe and treat my patients without it. Like, well, where do we get this? And he goes, He says, you know what? I know one person who has a bunch of them. You can purchase them from him. And he cured his poverty.
That's totally cool.
Wow.
And what I love about that story, I know what I love about that story is he did cure his poverty. He did do something to help him, and he did it, with the creativity of something outside of his medical system.
That's really cool.
I love it.
So I have a question. Today in modern herbal theory, is there a place for young apricot leaves or shoots or whatever? Is that a thing?
Not that I'm aware of. No, we use apricot seeds, the inner part of the seed that looks
like an almond.
Crack it open, it looks like an almond. Yeah, they use that. Yeah, yeah, they use that. They use that for coughing.
Isn't there a bit of cyanide in that seed?
There is. It's in the peel, and they scrape they scrape the peel off, and then they toast the seeds. It's called xingren, right? And it's, if you translate that, it's like bitter almond, because it looks like an almond. So they say sweet almonds and bitter almonds.
I've seen this ingredient many times.
Bitter almond. And so they scrape off, because they were smart enough back then to figure out that there was toxicity in the skin, which is where the majority of the cyanide is.
They figure that out.
I know, it's amazing. So they scrape it off, then they toast them, and then they crush them, and then they add them to decoctions, and it treats wheezing and coughing and things like that. And Dr. Zhong would have prescribed that many, many times.
Do you think they they toasted it just to improve shelf life? I mean, does it really need to be toasted?
Yeah, I think the toasting decreases the toxicity. So there's a whole system called
I mean, cyanide's a mineral, isn't it?
Yeah,
Isn't it
well,
mineral?
I don't know.
There's a whole system called paozhi in Chinese, where they prepare the ingredients to either enhance certain functions or to reduce negative side effects. You fry something
Like licorice?
Yeah, you fry licorice in honey, and it has a different effect than if it's raw.
Well, and speaking of toxic things, you're reminding me of cinnabar.
Oh, cinnabar.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, for those who don't know, that's basically mercury, in a form that is an orangey red color. Mm-hmm. And normally when people think of mercury, they think of the silvery stuff inside the thermometers.
Yeah.
But the cinnabar, how is that collected? How do they collect it out in nature? Do you know?
That is its own specialty. They go to school to learn how to find, harvest, prepare. What's funny is it's the doctors. When I say the doctors, I mean like the Chinese herbalists. Mm-hmm. They're not the people that are trained in how to collect those things. I mean, they have some idea, about those things. I think it's mined. I think it's a mineral, and they mine it, and they prepare it a certain way, and they powder it.
Because in the Vedic tradition, they have the bhishmas, the mineral ashes that are cooked. They're alchemical preparations. Mm-hmm. Usually that's referred to as Siddha medicine.
Okay.
It's a kind of a branch of its own. But when people talk about Ayurvedic medicine, sometimes it's a broader term that can sometimes include things like the the Unani medicine of Persia, as well as Himalayan and Siddha medicines, because they get integrated, because it's so many centuries of intermixing and things like that. So sometimes things have been absorbed, but they talk about these mineral ashes, and one of them is cinnabar. I don't remember the Vedic term for it, but
yeah.
mercury. And
I mean, it's pretty much illegal here.
Yeah.
We can't prescribe it. I've seen it.
but when we were kids,
oh yeah,
the formula that our teacher brought back in that strange plastic octagonal container that he had with the red top
I think I remember
and the
something
little
like
spoon inside,
Uh-huh.
or a little kind of a stick.
Yeah.
And we would take a spoonful on the tongue and then drink some tea
that. Yeah.
and then go teach. And I just remember feeling strangely uppity.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like it really must have had some potent stuff in it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Stimulant effect.
I wonder what was all in it.
Well, and it was that color.
Yeah.
He seemed to it was a secret formula, and that formula is from the E family. And the E family was very into alchemy. So there's a high probability that it had cinnabar in
It
it.
probably had cinnabar. I've taken it. I've taken
Because,
cinnabar.
okay, you remember, it's a weird mint
I didn't
dirt.
take that. I didn't take that, but I've taken cinnabar.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a secret formula given only after being initiated in their secret group.
Wow.
You were given this formula.
That's a lot of secrets.
I know.
Yeah, that's
I know.
kind
It's kind of
cool.
fun.
Yeah, that is kind of neat. Well, like in martial arts, Dantian.
Yeah.
That means the cinnabar field.
Yeah.
So it's
That's what Dantian means?
Yeah, elixir field, cinnabar field.
field of cinnabar. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Cinnabar in the broader term can mean like a cultivated elixir. It kind of it's its own. It's like fluid essence.
Like you've made your own cinnabar. You've cultivated your own.
It's the
special
elixir
herb.
of immortality. Supposedly, if you could convert cinnabar, then that is a stage in alchemy that can improve your health and
Chinese alchemy.
extend your longevity and give you power. Yeah.
How much? Here's a tangent, and feel free to refuse the tangent if you want. How much crossover? How much similarity is there between what I think of as normal or European alchemy and Chinese alchemy? Are they the same at all?
There's some crossover.
Is the goal the same? Maybe the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, immortality, that kind of thing.
As I understand it from reading Palputsu back when I was 18, it's a long time ago. Palputsu was the guy who. Do you know Palputsu?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
It's this alchemical treatise. I'll show it to you sometime. I have it. I have a copy. It's a treatise by an alchemist, a Chinese alchemist, who went wandering through, rural China in search of teachers and an understanding of the magic and alchemy and the cultivation and some of the fraudulent things that he ran into, as well as some of the true things that he ran into, people who had reached various levels of skill with alchemy. They have the Waijia and the Neijia version. So there's Neijia is internal family and Waijia is the external family. So that means like Neigong is internal skill, Waigong is external skill.
Okay.
So the schools of alchemy that were all about external were actually working with the mineral ashes and the cultivated spagyric extracts and essences of plants and astrology and various magical rituals and things like that. And then the Neijia family, the internal family of alchemy schools, were focused on interpreting the cultivation of yin and yang within the body through breath work, sexual abstinence, and then methods to open channels and create like a combustion within that would transmute Jing, Qi, and Shen. So the three treasures.
Essence, breath,
and mind. Yeah. Those things were combined in a special methodology to cultivate the individual so you could become what they call shenxie. So it's like a spiritual astronaut like you would cultivate your internal power so that you could travel the universe and live beyond your physical
Right.
years. And you could, when you died, you didn't actually die. You just sort of pass out of your body. Your body would be extraordinarily long-lived, but eventually would die. But what you would be living in would be kind of a transmogrified version of the body that was more solid than a spirit, but less physical than a body. So it was something in between. That was the result of your alchemical work. So you would practice over years of cultivation to attain this immortal body, the immortal fetus, right? That would be gestated within your practices until it became strong enough to exist on its own. And then, of course, drink the energy of the sun and the moon only.
Right.
To live for thousands of years in this sort of parallel dimension that could be here in the physical world sometimes.
Wow. When does this movie come out? Because it sounds awesome.
Sounds
man.
fucking awesome. I know
I
it
know.
does.
You're drinking the sun and moon sounds delicious.
It does. Oh man,
And it
what
also
a cocktail.
sounds similar
Tequila
to,
sunrise.
to what to what I would think of as the two strains of, in Western European traditions, magic and mysticism. Like you had ceremonial magic where you externalize, the whether you call them the elements of your psychology or whatever, things become external. Or there's like the meditation path where everything is internal and metaphorical.
Yes.
Sounds like there's a lot of parallels there.
Well, the Comte de Saint-Germain, right, is a Western version of an adept that supposedly or allegedly reached a level of alchemical mastery. And it's unknown exactly how, but there are texts and stories around it suggesting that it was a combination of the internal and the external work. But from what I've understood from reading Western alchemical treatises, many of them, not all of them, but many of them suggest that there's really no work possible without the divine connection. So in other words, that divinity which allows it is present in the work of the external alchemy. So when people are making spagyric tinctures and separating the gross from the fine, as they say, with a gentle heat, which is spoken of in the Emerald Tablet of
Hermes
Trismegistus, that process is observed in a very sacred way, aligned with astrological occurrences and prayer and purification and special locations, all combined in a special way to create something that exists physically, but is also a spiritual and internal process that happens at the same time. And if all those things are there, you can actually make what would not happen if it were someone else just trying to mix those ingredients together.
Right.
So it is a blend of kind of mystical experience, magical ritual, and physical, chemical exercises and experiments.
Wow, man, that's heavy stuff.
I
So
know.
it's like sort of like Western yoga, right? Combining all these things into one, all-inclusive, holistic package.
Yes.
Yeah,
I would call that yoga.
Yes.
Yoga means union, combining things, right?
Yeah, the Taoist yoga, the Taoists that were trying to become immortals, a lot of them killed themselves by trying to take various poisonous heavy metals and things like that. And so there are a lot of stories of people that, while seeking to live forever, they actually didn't live very long at all because they damaged their kidneys and stuff like that.
That's true with Western alchemy as well.
Yeah.
It's rife with stories of that.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, really, when you go really modern with it, Jack Parsons blew himself up.
I was just going to say Jack Parsons. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. How did Jack Parsons?
Well, he was.
We don't really know, right?
We don't know all of it. We just know that he was creating various rocket fuels in his basement back in the day when you could do that legally.
American rocketry pioneers, one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yep.
Okay.
Jack Parsons.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jack Parsons, a.k.a. John Parsons.
Okay.
And he was one of Crowley's students, Aleister Crowley's students. And he was an acquaintance, well, pretty pretty close acquaintance with L. Ron Hubbard.
Or whatever, yeah.
Okay.
To be put lightly, close acquaintance.
Yeah.
Let's say they ate at the same dinner table, literally and metaphorically.
Okay.
Those who are in the know will catch that reference. But
He who has ears to hear.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, there's a book called Love and Rockets. I'm sorry, Sex and Rockets, and another one called Strange Angel
Right.
that talks about this from two different angles.
Right.
And there's a Netflix.
Yeah, there was a show, Strange Angel,
Yeah, Strange Angel, exactly.
which I don't know if it got renewed. Was there more than one season of that?
I don't know, but I don't know why I forgot to look it up.
I
'Cause
actually never watched that
I
show.
wanted to watch it, and I just never got
I heard
around
it
to
was
it.
pretty good.
Cool.
I heard it was pretty good.
Yeah, so little known history with our
Yeah.
rocket program, but he had an avid interest in alchemy. And he did, I think what I've heard or read about him is that without his seminal works or say groundbreaking work in making rocket fuel, that they probably wouldn't have had the success they had as early as they had it. So he was pretty important because of what he had figured out. There is a limit to how powerful liquid fuels can be,
Yeah.
with standard combustion and things like that. But for the day, it was pretty advanced what he
Wow.
was doing.
Well,
That's
and he helped to
interesting.
develop solid fuels too,
Yes.
that they burn.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, they brought in Dr. Werner von Braun, who was, fleeing from Germany in the
Nazi
40s.
Nazi naughties.
But, science is science, right? So let's get them working for us, I say.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. This has been a pretty cool tangent, Oliver. I'm glad you suggested it. I like it. That's pretty good. Yeah.
And so anyway, alchemy in Europe, it's generally considered, if you look in like a textbook or a history book or whatever, I mean, the standard take on it is that alchemy is the forerunner of modern chemistry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is true in a certain sense, but it was, it also had, some pretty different goals.
Different aims, different goals. Yep.
Sir Isaac Newton was famously an alchemist, and the standard approach, the standard idea is that, Neil deGrasse Tyson will tell you that his alchemical studies got him nowhere, and it was his actual mathematical studies and physics and stuff that, that went somewhere. But how do you know that his alchemical studies didn't inspire him to,
Yeah.
create, whatever he created in himself that allowed him to discover, the
Yeah.
laws behind the, the motion of the planets and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
This is the
exactly.
question.
Yeah.
That
Well-
fascinates me too.
And, maybe he just didn't have the breakthrough. You know what I mean? It's like you never know. Maybe somebody was just one breakthrough away.
Or maybe he did and he kept it to himself.
That's true.
Yeah, that is another.
Because maybe he would have been burned at the stake if he had talked more about it.
That's right.
That's another
That's a good
challenge
point.
with things like alchemy is that most of it's written in code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unless
For
you
good
have the
reason.
key to the code, you can't really decipher it properly. And even if you don't have the initiated understanding of what the key means, you may be able to get the word, but you won't understand how that word's used. So, for example, when we read ancient Chinese alchemical texts, there's all these symbols for various things like a tortoise and a bamboo or whatever. And they may be the physical objects. They also may be references to something.
Yeah.
In other words, an associated meaning that isn't literal. With alchemy, it's very difficult to know. Carl Jung was fascinated with alchemy. He interpreted it looking at it from the standpoint, I think, of internal alchemy.
Yeah.
So everything that he saw as external alchemy, he mostly read that and wrote about it as an internal metaphor that related to the human spiritual and energetic system. Because he was an esoteric person. He wasn't just that's a pet peeve of mine. People think Carl Jung just was talking about psychology when he was an avid spiritualist.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
and an alchemist. He was interested in magic and spiritual sciences and psychic gifts, and he was absolutely open to that. I mean, like pissed off his mentor, Sigmund Freud, they had a broken relationship in part because of his openness towards things like that.
Yeah.
And Sigmund Freud's refusal to look at things like that. It scared the shit out of him.
Yeah. That's really something we so many people base the ability to get along,
On
like the
shared
ability to have
ideas.
friendships and get along and like each other on these psychological principles. And two of the main guys that started it didn't even get along.
Yeah.
It's just there's some irony there. I'm just pointing it out. Yeah.
I'm going to say that it's probably no coincidence. I mean, it's absolutely related that Freud was highly interested in hypnotism early on.
Yeah.
And what he discovered made him terrified of hypnosis, and he stopped doing it and focused on the psychoanalytic approach.
And he was terrified of the unconscious.
He was.
Yeah, it's a
He
scary
saw it
place.
as a very dangerous thing.
Yeah. Well, don't you think today in modern times, like the modern United States, we take substances all the time to try to enhance our life, to make things better. For example, I dare I even say, in the morning when you have a cup of coffee, isn't that kind of in a way trying to do alchemy? Aren't we
Yes.
trying to wake up, enhance our experience, pay attention, get more out of life, focus better? You know what I mean? Isn't that in a way alchemy?
I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then make bulletproof coffee, even though that's even better alchemy.
It is. There's probably no other, perfect way to put it. Is that kitchen alchemy, nutritional alchemy. I mean, we are attributing probably more to those things than most standard people would attribute. Like I know those of us who are fascinated with biohacking and who also love cooking. I think most of us, maybe not all of us, but most of us have more of a romantic, almost spiritual point of view about it. It's like we're open to the magic that could actually be happening as we make that coffee or as we make this, as I make my enchilada sauce, right?
Absolutely.
I put ingredients in there that are not what my family taught me to put in. I put some of those in, but I add a lot of personal magic into that. And for me,
Carlos's
it's mystical.
alchemical enchilada sauce.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
People,
Yes.
you need to understand, Carlos's enchilada sauce
Oh, yeah,
is
it's
something
good.
special.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it's a little darker than most enchilada sauces, and nobody has ever had it without saying something extremely positive about it.
Yeah, it is an alchemy.
It's good stuff.
But even for me, at Ayurvedic school, you learn basic things as well, like how to make ghee.
Yeah, right.
And
I've made
because
ghee.
there's
Yeah,
medicated
I've made ghee.
ghees and things like that. But when I make ghee, I step into my alchemy role. I put on Vedic chanting, I burn some incense, I say some prayers, I align myself, and then I make the ghee with the ingredients. And then as I'm making the ghee, I do think about the separation of the gross to the fine, the heavy elements sinking, the lighter elements vanishing and evaporating, and concentrating on the butter oil that's in the middle, the golden stuff, and then waiting for that moment of smell. I mean, you describe this in alchemical treatises. They do talk about various things that I'm mentioning right now, like the sense of effulgence will arise, and that's when you know that you need to lower the heat, and all these various kinds of things they talk about. Which really stimulate the imagination, especially with all the wonderful images and symbolic elements and mathematical relationships and shapes and colors and things added to the sort of underlying principles.
Yeah.
So, when I do ghee, that's how I do it.
Yeah, sometimes I've even read in old books on Chinese herbal medicine where they might talk about the water that you should use for this decoction should have been poured and repoured 100 times before you decoct it. It's like this is just cute little things like that. Well, we do it all the time. Like we start mixing ingredients. Like how often have you seen green tea with ginseng? Right. Well, why are we doing that? I do need to point out to the world that in Chinese medicine, green tea and ginseng are contraindicated to be used together. So I just want to tell that to all the tea companies that are putting tiny, minute amounts of ginseng in your green tea.
Really?
Green tea and ginseng apparently compete for absorption. So they tell you not to drink green tea when you take ginseng, or you don't get the benefit of the ginseng.
It's like making a juice with kale and spinach. Spinach is iron dominant and kale's more calcium dominant, and it's different enzymes that break them down. So they say for ideal absorption, don't mix them in the same green drink.
Whoa, I didn't know that either.
And if you want to enhance the digestion of almonds, for example, you can add orange
I did know that because Michael D'Amico, thank you, Michael. He told me that a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And
And
you
he
can
said
look at
chew your almonds a lot.
chew them up. And if you look at one of those raw food charts that tells you the relative sweetness and alkalinity and acidity of the fruits, you start to notice the difference when you mix certain fruits, whether you get gassy or not. You know, how you feel.
Interesting.
So certain things are a better mix, unless you're just going for taste. But if you're going for digestive alchemy,
Right. Well,
you
it
think
is
about that
alchemy, though,
stuff.
because you're talking about kale and spinach. You're talking about metals
Yeah.
in these leaves.
Exactly. Good
Iron
point.
and calcium and minerals and stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, that's interesting. That's chemistry, you know?
Yeah.
It is.
Popeye the Sailor Man was an alchemist.
He was.
Oh, yeah. Very
He
good.
converted that spinach.
Yeah, it was iron and aluminum, and
He was definitely transmuting his Jing,
he was big time.
for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was smoking in that pipe, though.
Yeah. Obviously something enhancing.
Just out of curiosity, you probably have you ever read the book, The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz?
Long time ago. Yeah.
What the fuck? That is the most fucked up, crazy ass, weird book I've ever read in my life.
Bizarre AF.
It's bizarre AF. It's supposed to be. It's an alchemical. It's one of the three main Rosicrucian alchemical texts published in the early 17th century, early 1600s. And it's just this weird ass fable, and it's supposed to mean something. You can tell they're trying to tell you something if you could just pick up on the symbolism, but it is just so convoluted and whacked out.
Huh.
Man.
Yeah.
The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. Check it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a trip.
All right. That sounds great.
Yeah.
In a
it is.
weird
you
way.
You can download it for free off of several sites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a bizarre treatise.
That's cool.
They say that
I have heard that, actually.
you have heard that, right?
That's very
I
profound.
mean, everyone's heard, right?
yeah.
Yeah, Simon and Garfunkel did a song about that.
They did.
Yeah, the sound of.
Got it. Why I paused was because I'm having difficulty remembering the singular word. I can remember the entire set of names, but for some reason, the singular word that they usually refer to him as in short, I can't seem to recall at the moment.
Refer to who as?
This alchemist magician, very famous.
Are you talking about Paracelsus?
Thank you. Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah. I have one of his
Paracelsus.
treatises on my shelf.
Yes. So I couldn't remember, at the time. Thank you for that. I couldn't remember. Again,
Paracelsus.
apparently I have a.
Well, apparently he got his
brain
name. His
block
name is a
on that.
moniker. There was a doctor named Celsus, a Roman doctor. I don't know too much about this, but he got this name because people said he was even better than Celsus. He was beyond Celsus.
So he was he ran
Paracelsus.
circles around Celsus.
Yeah.
So he was
Celsus.
Paracelsus.
Well, para as a prefix means sort of like beyond,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, like paraconsciousness.
Yeah.
I like that term, although I don't use it often because people don't know what I mean.
Paraconscious. P-A-R-A or P-E-R-I? P-A-R-A, right?
P-A-R-A.
Yeah, P-A-R-A.
So there's
And parapsychology, of course.
subconscious. There's unconscious, which usually refers to more or less the same thing.
Right.
I also like to say the paraconscious
Paraconscious.
or the other than conscious.
That's dope. I can
Or
dig
the
that.
super conscious.
Right. Yeah.
Parrots are beyond other birds.
Intra consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah. The parrot consciousness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's very repetitive.
It's for bird brains.
Yeah, that's right. It does. Yeah, but it never gets lost.
It doesn't. Light as a feather.
I read a story about this person who had a parrot, and the parrot learned all these words, and the parrot flew away, disappeared. And some time went by, I don't know, years went by, and the parrot showed up again speaking Spanish.
Wow.
Isn't that cute?
That's super
a true
cute.
story, really?
Yeah, it's a true story. There's like a whole article I read about it or something.
Wow, that's super cool.
So
Well, Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, otherwise known as Paracelsus, wrote a lot about alchemy, but most of his stuff has been burned and destroyed. So I've read that he maybe had like 1,000 books that he wrote. That could be
Wow.
an exaggeration, but regardless, if it was 1,000, but that they say, but then he really wrote 500, that's still freaking impressive.
that's a lot.
Now,
Yeah.
those books may be short. Some of them, many of them might be really short treatises, but
Yeah.
he wrote quite a lot. He was very prolific, and that I just know that most of his stuff didn't survive.
Right.
Probably the church burning it. Thanks, church. But
Oh man, the church.
but,
I was
yeah.
thinking about the church today. The Catholic Church, the European church that basically spanned the Dark Ages, the medieval times. Mm-hmm. And there's so much to criticize about the church. But what I was thinking was, I was listening to some music, and as you know, a lot of the music that I listen to, I'm not a religious man myself, but a lot of the music I listen to is religious music simply because that's the music that existed at the time. That's what we have.
yeah,
And
Secular
wasn't
music didn't survive mostly because they didn't write it down. The church invented musical notation.
and isn't there some truth to the idea that, because the church was so big and powerful and had money, that ended up being, how a lot of artists got employed?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially the decadent popes into like the 16th century. They would just lavishly, get artists from all over the world or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel duty bound to mention, though, imagine what life would have been like if any number of, I would say, more enlightened approaches had survived.
Yeah.
Like the Druids, or like the people in Alexandria, where Hypatia lectured in university to people of different faiths and non-faiths.
Right.
Those libraries of Alexandria, the 3 or 4 different versions of the libraries that existed over time. These cultures, if they had survived.
Right. Yeah, it's fun to speculate about that because obviously, whether you're religious or not today, if you're living in the West, the Christian church has had profound impacts on pretty much every aspect of life.
It has.
An alternate history wherein, the little cult of, Christianity somehow fizzled and died. What would Europe have been like? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, where would alchemy be today? If I'm just kidding, of course. But
Yeah. But, where would our sense of connection to the ebbs and flows, the alchemy of nature and time,
yeah. Right.
time, which is really rhythm and cycles of rhythm.
Yeah. I read about a study that was done recently that, I don't know exactly how they determined this, but they were looking at the human biorhythm as far as the seasons go.
Okay.
And they had really good evidence, some kind of, chemical evidence that the human body does not recognize 4 seasons, but it does recognize 2. Late spring and late fall.
Wow.
Which is very interesting. So the human body has its own timing system, and it responds and recognizes and relates to 2 seasons.
Now, if you were to apply this understanding, I wonder if it would open up a Pandora's box of interpretations
Yeah.
when combined with some of the magical logic of traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, or even some of the Greek three humors, the Neoplatonic reconstruction kind of ideas about nature and
Yeah. Yeah.
medicine and all that.
Well, I mean, just me personally, my own experience in life is, and I know others get this too, there is a time of year when the weather starts to change and you feel different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't last the whole rest of the seasons. Like, if I think about it, it is probably like late fall, when I really start to feel that, oh gosh, it's getting cold. It's, there's a sense of excitement or potential.
It's associated with the holidays surrounding the winter solstice, the upcoming winter solstice, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
I mean, that's when the
Yeah.
holidays are. That's not arbitrary. I mean, it's part of the whole cycle of the year. You know?
Yeah, that does make sense. Maybe we're responding to that the sets of internal sensations that come along with those body changes, these different.
Yeah. See, this is where my mind wants to build this bridge between so-called scientific thinking and magical thinking. It wants to find this merger because I'm not comfortable letting go of what I strongly sense has value.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We did not survive as long as we did because of modern scientific thinking. We survived primarily because of magical thinking. And modern scientific thinking has catapulted us at light speed in some powerful directions.
For sure.
But it's also led to some increased problems
And
that are our creation,
Right.
not the creation of the planet.
And it's not foundational to who we are
No.
as beings because it's so new, you know?
Yeah. So while I deeply appreciate and honor the power and respect the power that scientific theorems and hypotheses and testing hypotheses, the whole process of the scientific method, all of that I think is amazing.
Yeah, man.
But when you divorce it from any kind of introspective, reflective, at least an effort to connect it ecologically, and that could look like, a humanistic approach of trying to find ecology within that. That can look like a religious approach, or it can look like something in between. But we don't have those strong qualities and impulses within us just because. I mean, they're integral to our happiness. They're integral to our development as a human being, development of compassion, development of, can you develop compassion without a religious trapping around it? Sure you can. But that is one way to codify it, is through stories and traditions and gatherings and various kinds of rituals and so on. These are ways to kind of integrate the thinking and lock them into our memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're a way to teach and transmit systems of morality,
Yeah.
which, there are lots of different systems of morality out there,
Mm-hmm.
Some are more holistic and tied to the natural world than others.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one of the things you were implying about Catholicism earlier is that it does seem to be a little bit divorced from nature, or from the cycles of nature, or from our, magical roots or whatever, even though it is fundamentally a magical organization.
It
I mean,
is.
the central ritual,
It is.
the Catholic Mass, is
It's magic.
magical transmutation. It's alchemy.
It is alchemy, but it's like, I want to say it's magic divorced from its respect for duality.
Okay, I see
You know
what
what I
you're
mean?
saying.
There tends to be this woefully strong emphasis on the masculine.
Right. Well, because, the Catholic cosmology is that of imbalance. Light will win over darkness.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that light and darkness are in a constant but balanced struggle. This is known as the Manichaean heresy. But yeah, imbalance is a fundamental part of the Catholic or Christian cosmology. Because the story is one day the good guys will win.
Yeah.
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 And the story will be over.
And
Yeah.
and somewhere along the way, an evil was done by a woman that twisted things, and we've been suffering ever since. But one day,
Exactly.
light will win again.
Yeah.
And therefore implying that the female is dark, which,
Well,
if you look at that from a yin-yang standpoint, that makes sense.
It makes
you know.
sense. It's just
Yin-
without the judgment.
Without the judgment around it, yes. Darkness and light, just
Yeah.
as contrasts to one another,
Yeah.
not as absolutes. But
right.
Yeah.
that's the thing that goes back to how we interpret things. I mean, ideas about yin and yang, and ideas about qi, and ideas about magical elements often get misinterpreted because they're underrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They don't tell you enough about it to give it context, and so therefore it sounds ridiculous. And therefore, what's the point? And why would anyone with two brain cells want to spend any energy learning about it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's all those stories. A pretty big part of our Western kind of storytelling mythology as a whole is that the idea that at one point magic left the world. Right? You see this idea, it happens in the Arthurian legends, it happens in Tolkien. The idea that there used to be magic, but it's sort of fading away.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of true. It's
Yeah.
almost like history.
Yeah. It also kind of reminds me of just growing up. There's the magic of childhood, and children always exist.
Yeah.
And so there is magic in the world.
This is the Peter Pan story.
It's Peter Pan. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then at some point there's a transformation and the magic is gone. And there's no
You know what? You know how you said there was 2 seasons? Well, I think I just tonight I'm experiencing this fall season because this is the first time I've been cold in a long time.
Ah.
I just realized, I'm like, what's going on with me? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm cold. I haven't been cold in months.
It's been hot lately.
It feels nice to be cold.
It does. I know.
Shivering a little bit.
I prefer it. I like the cold. Not too cold, but
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'd rather bundle up than feel like I can't strip down any more than I am.
Yeah.
Take off your skin.
Take it off.
Yeah. Yin and yang, hot and cold.
But to revisit something that we were talking about, I realized that I diverged a little bit. But what I was going to say is that imagine if you take away a lot of the distractions. There's this wonderful documentary, The Social Dilemma, which talks about all the social distractions we have and how dangerous it is and why they're so sticky and so on. But imagine you took away a lot of that, but you had the same ability to group together intelligent minds who had enough of a balance of mind that they could engage in, let's say, cognitive strengthening practices like meditation and healthy exercise and breath work, and they could begin to explore sensation at a very, very deep level. And you'd have different schools kind of focusing on different things. I'm almost being reminded of Dune here, that you get these different branches of humanity that can specialize and develop, and perhaps even over time, cultivate a genetic predisposition because it goes on for 1,000 generations or whatever, so that we do get something quite different in our evolution. But where each guild, to use a Dune term, has enough respect for the other that it recognizes that they're of equal value, just in a different area of life. Where would we be? Would we be able to have the magic that is supposedly gone in the legends? Would we have that magic again? Would that be? I strongly suspect that we would, even if we did it in a single generation. Not even thousands. But what could be potentiated over 1,000 generations? Wow.
Right. Well,
That's fun.
And from my perspective, in order for that kind of, divergent evolution to occur, populations would have to be separated from each other, which is something that's happening less and less in this world. But if we become an interplanetary civilization, this could definitely happen.
Yes.
Good point.
We'd be like Darwin's finches,
Well, we are getting a lot of interesting news these days. We have the Pentagon and the U.S. Navy all but admitting that there are UFOs. They're trying to kind of leave themselves a little bit of a back door, a side door exit by saying, well, just because they're unidentified aerial phenomenon or unidentified flying objects or whatever, that it doesn't necessarily mean it's a saucer from another planet. And that's, I agree. It doesn't always necessarily mean that. We could have parallel dimensions existing here. We could have a race of highly advanced people that have been so far ahead of us that we cannot detect them except for once in a while.
Or, of course, it could be military aircraft that are secret and
Could be.
aren't publicly known.
Although we've been seeing very similar reports for at least 100 years, so that's probably unlikely.
Yeah. And there's the movie Cowboys and Aliens. So there you go.
Well,
Right.
because there are reports from that long ago.
Yeah.
There are even photographs from that long ago.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Well, and
a
sometimes
few
you
of them.
see like cave drawings or ancient manuscripts with things that really look like
Yeah.
aliens sitting in a spacecraft,
Yeah, I wasn't even going to mention that because I was just thinking about there's no, at least with a photograph, you can say, well, that's modern technology. But you're right. There's absolutely that, and religious references, and I mean the Sumerian texts that refer to this like it was common knowledge. Like in multiple cuneiform texts, you see it all over the place. It's referred to as like it's a given that we had the Anunnaki
The what? What's that?
The Anunnaki, or
Anunnaki.
basically the star people that came, and they had their own epic, Gilgamesh, and talks about
This is from the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Enki and Enlil and
Enkidu, yeah.
and they had this interaction, the sun Marduk, and it goes on and on. But they were identifying things that we still don't really understand fully. I mean, they identified certain things, planets in our solar system that you couldn't see with a telescope.
Well, and how did the Dogon tribe know that Sirius was a binary star system?
Yes.
Apparently there's no way of knowing that without, I mean, we didn't prove that until, modern times.
Yes. There's just far too many examples of this.
Dogons.
Doggone it. But when we see this kind of thing being admitted, I think we're being desensitized. This is my theory, that we're being desensitized as a psyop to allow for the maneuverability of government decision making without a great protest. They do realize that if they suddenly claimed that there were aliens, that there would be a strong religious resistance that would come up. They would say, "Oh, this is the sign of the end times." They would interpret this as a sign that Lucifer is controlling things, and therefore we need to. And so there would be this huge schism that would be worse than the schism we're already experiencing. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've been hesitant to admit these things. And another reason, of course, is that I believe it's of strategic advantage to know more than your enemies.
Sometimes I feel like them just not releasing what they have and just being sort of tight-lipped about things is because the truth is even stranger and more fucked up than the stories people are making up. You know what I mean?
Have to agree.
Sometimes it's like, okay, well, just let them believe that. That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, governments at all times, in all countries, all over the world, forever, have always done fucked up shit. I mean,
Yes. And hidden it.
right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's not conspiracy theory. It's just conspiracy.
The idea that in our time and place right now, our government is not doing anything nefarious is such an outlandish claim. I would say that would require some, they say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I would say you would need some extraordinary evidence for the extraordinary claim that there's nothing nefarious going on.
Yeah.
Bingo. Nailed it.
Always,
Well said, Oliver.
Yeah. I can think of an individual who's very intelligent and schooled in cognitive things that I study. Who literally said point blank to me at one point, I just believe that everything that you hear from these government, it's pretty much at face value. It's pretty much that's what it is. Like there's no hidden agenda behind anything, and there's no. I just don't believe that about it. And this is a person who I shared quite a lot of articles that showed very clearly that there have been court cases over this. That there's been this person or that person who's come out and had admitted it. And I'm referring to a variety of things.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm referring to things like conspiracies that were actually busted. Things that where it became clear, like MK Ultra. I mean, that's not a lie. It happened and it's still happening. Paperclip, Artichoke, all these other CIA operations, or things that never got off the ground at all, like the Northwoods, Operation Northwoods, where they were.
There's a lot of things to Google in there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Northwoods was where they were actually planning to do a false flag against America. So we were planning, as a Pentagon plan, hatched in the Pentagon think tanks, to do a false flag operation where Middle Eastern terrorists were framed or used to pilot planes to crash into the Empire State Building. Does that sound slightly familiar? I wonder why that is. Of course, you could argue, well, but they never hatched that plan. Yes, but why are they spending time, all that time and energy creating a very specific plan to do a false flag operation on our soil, blaming another country for it? So
On our soul as well.
On our soul and our soil. Our soiled souls who are thinking of that. So what does that mean? It just means to me that there are a whole lot of hidden elements going on at all times. So it's not that crazy to think about and wonder like, hey, maybe this is going on, maybe that's going on. I think where people lose it in conspiracy theories is that they believe everything they read that sounds plausible. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important to read those things with an understanding of that you must maintain the question all the time. How do we know if this is true or not? How reliable is this information? How likely is this to be based upon what I know? And can I accept that I will understand the entire construct, but never know whether it's true or not?
Yeah.
Can I hold on to that? Because if I can't, it's going to make me crazy. And I just need to I have to believe it. Well,
Right.
That could be dangerous. Right?
If you're not comfortable with uncertainty, then you're really tempted to just superimpose some certainty on things that, there is a
Which could cause you to either believe that everyone in the government are shape-shifting reptilians from another dimension, trying to suck your soul and vampirize you of energy, or you could decide that, everything that the government says is at face value and there's no ulterior motives whatsoever. They're just trying their best to make things better. Right. Either one of those extremes is possible when you are uncomfortable with uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good advice for anybody who has interest in these topics or has no interest in these topics.
Yeah.
Is to just go into it with this idea of, I'm going to look at it as fascinating, interesting, exciting, potentially scary, and be able to hold on to that and wait. And then just see what happens over time and just remain curious.
Yes, and know that you don't have to. You can also skip it altogether. Because if you don't have the mind and the heart for it, I personally would recommend that you don't. Because
you can just skip it. You can do that.
You can just skip it.
Just don't worry about it.
You can say, you can do the DNA, do not answer on the phone. Put your hand out. That's the thing. Is right now, what are we going through? Pandemic. What are we surrounded with? A lot of mixed feelings. It's the system that's influencing all of us right now on the planet.
Uncertainty right now.
A lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of rage and anger and schisms happening. There's a lot of conspiracy theory, and there's probably a lot of actual conspiracy going on.
But
and there's a lot of conspiracy denial.
Behavior, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if we get exposed to these sticky viral ideas and we don't cultivate critical thinking, and we don't cultivate the ability to stay really clear inside of ourselves with our objectives, then it's very easy to kind of fall into the emotion of it either way. And so my personal choice with all this is to stay in a space that I can still respect tomorrow or 10 years from now, to try my best to say, hey, rather than buying into every theory about what's going on, just do what seems to be the safest, follow what I feel I've developed as kind of like a healthy attitude around it, which includes some skepticism. I don't necessarily believe everything I hear, even from official sources, but I'm also asking myself, well, how dangerous would it potentially be for me to violate this or that suggestion? I mean, to me, wearing a mask is not a huge ask. It's uncomfortable. I'm not 100% convinced that it's making a huge difference or even very much of a noticeable difference, but it's not a huge ask. As Tony Fauci said, it's not about whether it works or not. It's a symbol of compliance. That's a direct quote. The first part might not be, but the part where he said it's about compliance, that's a quote. And I can accept that.
It's an social dilemma, though, because the mask really doesn't protect you. It protects the other people.
Again,
for the most part.
That is the argument, but I've also seen counter arguments to that it doesn't.
But, I mean, that's the generally accepted science. Anyway, it's like an interesting social dilemma, though, because people that are selfish, I mean, if they don't care. Not wearing a mask is a selfish act from that perspective because you're not protecting yourself, you're protecting the others. And if I'm hanging around people and they're not wearing masks, then it doesn't really do much good for me to wear one.
Right.
Because it's for them, And they obviously don't care. So it doesn't make sense to be more careful than the group,
Yeah, and like you said, Carlos, that it isn't a big ask.
Yeah. So I wear one.
Yeah, and the research on it is mixed, but you can make the argument that, logically speaking, here's how I look at it. If you put on a mask and somebody's smoking a cigarette, chances are, unless you really have a proper N95 mask that's measured to your face and fits the way it's supposed to fit, you're probably going to smell smoke, which means some smoke is getting through that mask. But you're not going to smell as much smoke, right, if you wear a mask. And in the same way, if it decreases your exposure to a virus and you get less of the virus and still get sick, less gives your immune system a little bit more of a chance to respond. You know what I mean? And so it's... how much it helps, hard to say. Might it help? Potentially. But it certainly doesn't really hurt to have it on. Yeah, and it makes other people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And so, it's
something. To loop that back to magical thinking, pause for emphasis. It could be that the placebo effect is being harnessed to our benefit.
Yeah.
That it's okay, because if placebo effect even creates a 20% decrease in cases, that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
What if all this mask wearing has decreased the number of regular flus? And there's a few people that are alive.
It probably will.
So there you go. So it's...
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard thing because, we don't have all the data in front of us, and, we're not scientists or whatever. But, I just, as a layperson, I have a hard time because I see that there are studies that go on both sides of it. Totally doesn't work at all, completely. And no, studies are showing that it actually helps and it's really, really good. And I see both sides of that and go, well, I could actually question who's funding the research. And I could look on both sides of that equation and point out axes to grind. It's not like the weight is greater on the side, from my perspective, of, everyone that says that you shouldn't be doing it, those are all right-wing propaganda mills. No, actually, many of them aren't. It's just that how many people actually spend time searching for the exceptions? What people tend to do is say, I don't have time for that. I just want to go with the basic news bites and follow that. So the news bites say what most people are echoing, which is that any counter information is just coming from ridiculous right-wing propaganda mills.
And stupid truth always evading simplification.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, to jump a little lateral chunk here, the whole fake news idea. Okay.
We're surrounded by fake news these days.
Right. And everything's fake news, and it's the most, it's the easiest thing to throw out there. You can just kind of invalidate everything that was just told to you by saying, it's fake news, right?
Right. But, it's complicated by the fact that there's a lot of fake news shows out there. There are comedy shows, though.
Yes.
Fake news is funny. Jon Stewart, kind of started that whole thing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Loved it. Yeah.
And there's it's a gradient. There's like a spectrum of how fake. There's news with a little bit of humor. Like there's John Oliver, who seems, at least from his perspective, seems like he's trying to he's got an axe to grind, but he's getting deep into subjects. But there's some F-bombs, a little bit of humor, and then there's somebody that's mostly humor, just a little bit of news, like SNL, Weekend Update. And then you get lost in the spectrum sometimes.
Yeah.
There's the editorialism.
Sure.
You have you have the Bill Maher folks. You've got the who's the guy who used to be at Fox, Bill O'Reilly.
Oh, O'Reilly.
Right?
O'Reilly got fired, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And
eventually.
then there's Hannity, of course.
Yep. And then Hannity, right? That's the same side, same network. Yeah. But then you've got the Keith Olbermann and the Rachel Maddow.
Keith Olbermann, man, that guy was mad. That guy was pissed.
He was.
Remember those rants he used to do?
Those early rants were phenomenal to listen to.
And But
when you do a truth seek on it, you realize, okay, this isn't a black and white issue here. He's made some gross errors as well in his argument. There's you can shoot holes in both sides of the argument. I tended personally to align myself more with the Keith Olbermann bent than I did the Bill O'Reilly. I wanted to smack Bill O'Reilly, but
did you see him interview Marilyn Manson?
No.
Because Marilyn Manson just hands him his ass. I mean, because he's such a good debater, basically.
Yeah,
He really
he's
is.
a master debater, isn't he?
I think probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of
Masturbating?
Oh, now that you mention it, okay, I was going to say,
Remember when the Surgeon General got fired for saying people should masturbate?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh,
As
that
you were
was
younger?
right?
Yeah, well, that was
Was that post Dr. Ruth?
Well, you know what that was?
Yeah.
That was I met her actually.
Yeah, she
You met
wasn't-
Wonderful woman.
Did she recommend?
It was one of those things that was.
Yeah, she said masturbation is good for your
very-
health.
She did.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it was
there's data. I mean, come on.
somebody asked her a question, and her response was, "Well, like should masturbation be taught or something?" And I think her response was, "Well, it's part of the human sexual experience, so yeah, it should be taught." It was a very reasonable thing, and then of course they took it and ran with it. She was the surgeon. She was the first black female surgeon general,
And they
she
canned
was
her for
an
that?
incredible
That's
person.
fucking ridiculous.
Here, let me get her name. I met her because she was the keynote speaker at one of our commencements.
Wow. I say give that woman a medal.
There should be a masturbation class in high school, sophomore year, or maybe just a week. Put it in the health and safety class. Techniques. You could learn a lot.
Yeah, we were speaking about Jocelyn Elders.
Jocelyn Elders. I think.
And a very nice woman. I had a chance to just say hi to her, and she was very, very nice.
Nice name.
Very well spoken.
Nice.
She's fascinating too because way back in the day, you look at her age, you have a black female who became like the lead physician at the hospital in her department, leading all these white male doctors. I mean, she was a smart individual.
Wow.
All becomes a surgeon general, but I guess had to step down because of the media. No match for the media. You're just gonna get pulled down from the media. But anyways.
Yeah, they can crucify you if they want to.
Yeah.
Even the stuff that we've said in this particular discussion, you could probably take sound bites and just, make me sound like I'm a fucking wingnut.
Yeah, just right there. I'm a fucking wingnut.
Right.
I'm a fucking wingnut. You can
totally.
just do that again and again.
I mean, it's super easy. You focus in on what sounds a little bit edgy, and that is our show is a little bit on the edge. So of course, it's going to be easy to find comments here and there to blow out of proportion and take out of context and to place within a context that contrasts it so strongly that people will view that frame as an indicator of bad things.
We'll just hire Marilyn Manson to represent us in court.
Oh, that's
And
true.
then
We could
we'll
always
win.
do that.
Yeah. So
This is why it's not a good idea to just read the headlines, which so many people do.
Yeah.
People get their news by scrolling and they catch glimpses of headlines.
Yep.
And almost invariably the headline, if not misleading, at least doesn't tell the whole story. You know, I mean,
yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's also interesting that what you're the surface of what you're reading affects your neurology. So if you're looking at a screen, people are more likely to skim in order to find what validates what they already know. If you're looking at paper, you're more likely to read for the purpose of learning.
Makes sense.
And so since news media is mostly like clips on social media and it's all skim worthy, you just see a headline, do a quick skim, you see something that validates what you already know, and you haven't learned anything.
it's all skim, man. Fucking 2% milk.
Yeah, it's the echo chamber.
Yeah.
In effect. I would love for people to be more open to exploring ideas rather than so sure of their position that they are just working to confirm themselves by denying your points, by finding ways instead of looking for what might be of value there. and maybe getting curious and asking, well, why do you believe that?
Yeah.
I always feel that that's way more effective if you're ever going to persuade or convince someone, is just find out more about why they feel the way they feel. Stop trying to disprove them in every 2 seconds, every juncture.
Yeah.
Find out.
It's ineffective.
Yeah.
It's ineffective anyway, so don't even try.
I mean, like the things I said tonight, like about UFOs, they're just things that I'm leaning towards believing this because I have enough cumulative experience. It doesn't mean I'm married to the fucking idea.
Right.
I mean, if it's proven that those things were false, I'm not going to sit there and pull my hair out over it. It's like, oh, wow, okay, that's bizarre.
Right, exactly. 'Cause
I'm just going to accept that.
we're
But
always
it's
learning, right? And I mean, you know that I'm a little bit more skeptical than you about UFOs.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about it, I don't run screaming and put my hands over my ears.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, let's see. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it goes interesting places.
Yeah, I'm very excited and hopeful that Bigfoot exists. I'm a big fan of Bigfoot, but it's okay with me if Bigfoot doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But it would be so cool if Bigfoot did.
It would be cool.
Is
know?
Bigfoot the same as Sasquatch?
Yeah,
Are they the same?
yeah, it's a an ape-like creature
Right.
here in North America.
And
Not
like
the same as a Yeti.
Like a Yeti, yeah.
But what
Similar to a Yeti, a Yeti.
And what's the other one? There's a more of a
the abominable snowman?
no, that's the Yeti.
There's the
the
orang
jungle one.
pendek.
What is it
The
called?
orang pendek.
Orang pendek.
Yeah, which is like in I don't know, like
The
Vietnam, that
Stinking
that area.
gorilla or whatever.
And there are actually reports of American soldiers coming across kind of like short hominid apes in the jungle when they were fighting in the war. That were kind of hard to
In
explain.
what, the Vietnam War?
Yeah, in the Vietnam War. Yeah. It's like a shorter version of the North. Like the North American one's supposed to be 8, 9, 10 feet tall, and theirs is short, 5 feet.
It does
6
make
feet.
you wonder whether or not there were, groups of ancient humans that branched off and just kind of bred in the forest. It's not that crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Because in a place like Vietnam, I could imagine them just kind of being like, whatever, they're in the forest, just leave them be.
People have this emotional attachment to the sanctity of Homo sapiens,
Yeah.
Even it's like a subconscious thing. Even if you are not a creationist, it's hard to give up the idea that, okay, here we are, we've arrived. This is some sort of endpoint.
Yeah. We've
We're
finally reached this level.
We're not at an endpoint.
Right. Oh, not even.
I don't think that exists.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah. Well, the Neanderthals and humans coexisted for a long time.
Many of us have Neanderthal DNA.
Yeah, and we do, and we coexisted a long time. They're the Denisovans and all kinds of other similar, humanoids, that were around there.
Speaking about out there ideas, Buckminster Fuller, who's generally considered to be a genius, believed that dolphins evolved from humans.
Oh, the other way.
He wrote a lengthy discussion of this.
Wow.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So would that mean that dolphins are an improvement over us? Because if they evolved from us, then they're leading the way.
Well, they have music
Yeah.
and language,
Yeah, and they have
games.
a great laugh.
and they
Yeah, they do.
surf.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they play games and they get high.
Yeah, I know, and they
They get high. What do they get high on?
Pufferfish.
Oh, really? Dolphins get high on pufferfish?
And they pass it around the way we pass joints.
Dude, stop bogarting that pufferfish.
Yeah, seriously. They get totally high from it. They pass it back and forth amongst their friends and hang out and then get playful.
They must have figured out dosage, too, because I assume you can OD on pufferfish.
Maybe, although their body weight's so much greater than ours that
I
wouldn't
wonder if there are
they could probably
dolphin alchemists.
take more.
Yeah, that's a
Distilling
dolphin alchemists
pufferfish tinctures.
trying to save the ocean or ruin it.
Well,
I
and,
don't know.
According to what I read about extremely low frequencies and whales, when there weren't a lot of industrial ships creating the sound pollution from sonar and various things, I think it was gray whale or sperm whale, I can't remember, very large whales, could hear each other from the opposite side of the earth. Wow. So they were that sensitive, and those sounds that they could do, just those big, long, extremely low frequency waves, could travel, and spawning was much easier because they could sense other groups very far away.
Wow. I can imagine a whale could make a really low sound because it has such a large vibrating, cavity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the land whales, aka the elephant,
Land whales.
yeah, I call them that just for fun. But they also produce extremely low frequencies.
They do.
That they can sense through their paws, their feet, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And they're
Hooves?
very sensitive. Hooves? I don't know, but they and it goes for hundreds of miles, I believe.
Yeah.
They can sense other tribes of elephants or packs of elephants, whatever they're called.
They can, yeah. And
So-
remember, we talked about this in another show. There was that story on Animal Planet about the little girl in Thailand who was on the baby elephant every day. And one day it took off running and she couldn't stop it because it was running away from the tsunami that was coming, and it saved her life.
That's so
Such a beautiful, because it could hear it, it could feel it on the ground, and they couldn't stop the elephant. Just made a beeline inland.
fascinating.
Like, we got a crazy elephant running away with the child, and it was saving the two of them.
And elephants have interesting culture too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. So weird when they find a dead elephant, like a skeleton, and they put
Yeah.
their trunks all around the tusks, and they all stand around it and they touch it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or the way that they
It's like
paint
Yeah, right. Or
images
people-
of themselves.
or play jazz. There's people that are out there playing free jazz with elephants.
Wow.
It's like my friend posted this on Facebook, and he's like, "I'm on level 77 on Candy Crush, and other people are playing free jazz with elephants. What have I done with my life?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when there are, let's say, interspecies cooperation, those stories always brighten my day and make me
Yeah.
smile
Yeah,
and
I
feel
love
my
it.
heart open.
I love it.
You
Me
know,
too.
this sort of alchemy of species working together and
Yeah.
creating something powerful from that bond.
Yeah. If I need to feel good, just go on YouTube and put, unlikely animal pairs.
Yeah,
and
like
you'll-
dogs that'll save a cat from a freeway
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
gotten hit already a couple times, and it picks it up, or you see the water buffalo saving a gazelle from being eaten by a tiger or a
Yeah.
alligator, crocodile, something like that.
Little glimmerings of altruism, like interspecies altruism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That maybe could be
very
like
interesting.
just a little epiphenomenon of kind of consciousness arising, where you least
Yeah.
expect it.
the dog that had a relationship with the dolphin. Remember that?
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
golden
yeah.
retriever that,
Yeah.
or maybe it wasn't a retriever, but it was a golden-looking dog that would run every day, bolt from the master, and go to the docks every day, so excited to interact.
Yeah.
And the dolphin that would come back and even let him ride on the dolphin's back.
Wow. That's
He
amazing.
would jump in the water to want to connect with the dolphin. The dolphin would give him rides, and it was this wonderful relationship.
Have you seen the polar bears that come in
With
to
the
play with the
dogs.
dogs? The sled dogs?
Yes,
Yeah.
amazing. These polar bears
incredible.
are some of the most dangerous animals on the planet.
Yeah, and they're probably hungry.
Yeah.
And they come in and they play with the dogs, and they don't hurt
Like
the dogs.
the Iditarod and Yukon Quest, like sled dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, those dogs are amazing. I used to live in Fairbanks, Alaska, which is the starting point of the Yukon Quest dog sled race, which is a 1,000-mile dog sled race, 1,000 miles from Fairbanks to Whitehorse, which is in the Yukon Territory. And these dogs are so beautiful, and these guys have these just long, like ice-crusted beards, and it's just like such an incredible feat.
That's amazing.
Fuck, man.
I know. Gosh, that is
they're
amazing.
they're still doing it. There's people that's
Yeah.
their thing.
Wow. That's
Probably really sucks to have to go to the bathroom when you're in the
Yeah.
middle of that situation.
When it's that cold, you really you just turn it off. You're like, you don't even, it's fucking cold. Whatever. It was cold, 60 degrees warmer. It was still fucking cold as hell.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? And it's like you've just become, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to take care of this.
It's like minus 12 versus, 11 degrees. What's the difference?
I mean,
Right.
I was not a happy camper when I had to pee at the top of Kilimanjaro. Believe me.
Oh, yeah.
What was the temperature up there?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Everything was, a blur at this point. It was just, I just know it was so freaking cold that I was in danger of getting frostbite, and it was painful.
For sure.
Yeah, it was very painful. I had to many times remove my gloves and put them inside my clothing because I needed to thaw them out because there was such pain.
Yeah.
There's something about the cold, though. There's something about the north. Like There's a
Remember the North. Yeah.
There's a poet named, I think his name is Robert Service. He wrote a lot of poems about the North, like the Arctic, Alaska, like that kind of like sourdough, like Alaska guy. Just really, it kind of just gets me in the heart, oh, the North, the cold, the pristine beauty of it.
The winter is coming.
There's something when it's 70 below zero.
Yeah.
Okay, Fahrenheit. And it's been dark for months. There's just something about the quality of like the moonlight and the air. It's so quiet. It's the quietest you'll ever hear.
Wow, when it's freezing cold. Huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Somehow it's just more quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, everything is still, I'll bet.
And the trees are all skeletal, covered in snow,
Like
And the Northern Lights. If you haven't seen the Northern Lights, go to Alaska in the winter. And look at the sky. It's amazing.
I want to do that.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't want to be that cold, but I want to do that.
Could go on one of those Alaskan cruises during the winter. That's
Okay.
possible.
All right. Yeah, there we go.
Of course, that would suck if they hit an iceberg.
Yeah.
But you could see the Northern Lights from a hot tub on the deck of your cruise ship.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would make it better or worse. Somehow the struggle and the hardship is part of it sometimes.
Yeah, I'm partial to that as well. I'm just saying. Yeah, it's true.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. My name is Oliver Althoen. I produced the show. I also wrote our theme song, which you're listening to right now. And the interstitial music this time is something I wrote on my baritone guitar. I call it Darkgasm. Pretty cool name, huh? Please subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts and find us on social media. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thank you for listening and have an authentic day.